A while back when we were doing our Great Affordable 1911 series, a comment from a viewer suggested that we should do a review on the Springfield TRP 10mm. I responded that I'd be real happy to do that, except we didn't own one. We still don't own one. I want to thank my friend Jim Huff for loaning me this gun to do a review on, and we shot it, and we're going to talk about it here on Rider's Range. So I want to thank you for visiting Rider's Range, and today we're going to take a look at the Springfield TRP Operator 10mm 1911 pistol. So first question that comes up is, what is a TRP operator? Well, the TRP is for Tactical Response Pistol. Right, so the TRP operator is available in 10mm and 45. There's a slight difference between the two. The prices are about the same. We'll talk about price a little bit later. And this particular one is in 10mm. We don't own any 10mm, so we had to scrounge around to get enough ammunition to at least do a basic test on this. But then the question comes up is, why a 10mm? What's wrong with the 45? Well, if you remember the history on the 10mm, the Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Cooper was kind of the godfather of the 10mm quite a while ago. The FBI eventually adopted it, but that was only briefly. They found a lot of their agents couldn't control the recoil of the 10mm adequately, so they went to a 10mm light, and that eventually morphed into the 40 caliber S&W. Some people call it the 40 short and weak, but we're not here to talk about calibers. We're here to talk about this 10mm. The FBI's HRT and SWAT team still did keep the 10mm, and there are a few departments around the country that are still using a 10mm as a primary duty pistol. Not too many people carrying it as a defensive pistol that I know of anyway. However, it certainly would make a decent defensive pistol if you really wanted to carry something in the way of a full-size gun. Now, a number of other manufacturers do make 10mm pistols, and Glock even makes them in a compact form. They can be a little more interesting to shoot, a little more recoil than this heavy 10mm here. So generally, the 10mm is something that people pick up for hunting. It's certainly an adequate small to medium game hunting round, and maybe even larger game depending. And there are some guides who carry the 10mm pistol in various forms. In bear country, certainly where you'll find large wild hogs, this is a good caliber to be used for those. Some people also complain about the recoil of a 10mm. I haven't found that to be an issue. Now, we've shot a lot of 45s, but one thing about the 10mm that makes it maybe a little more recoil friendly is the weight. Let's take just a quick look at this. And this gun weighs in. By the way, there is nothing in the chamber, and of course there's no magazine in it at all, so it's an empty gun. So the Springfield TRP Operator weighs in, empty weight, 39 ounces. The heaviest 1911 45 I still have hanging around is the SIG Scorpion, again also empty, no magazine, nothing in the chamber. And that comes in at 37.6 ounces, so an ounce and a half lighter roughly for the 45 over the 10mm. Of course, if you add a magazine with 8 rounds of 200 grain ammunition in it, and one more for the chamber, you got 47.1 ounces. That's quite a bit to carry, but that extra weight does make it a little bit more recoil friendly, and certainly in my experience it's pretty much on par with a 45. When I first shot a 10mm, I thought it's going to be stiff, and it really wasn't. So let's take a look at the gun. Of course, it comes in the typical Springfield tactical gear bag, which is a nice range bag to have. We'll start with the front. It does have a bushing barrel, nicely finished. This is a match barrel, by the way, and it is a ramped barrel. And let's see if we can get a little light on that so you can see the ramp. Stainless steel barrel. Again, match grade. The chamber is fully supported in this also, and in some of the 40 calibers it's not. We end up with what's called a Glock bulge on the cases, makes it a little more interesting to reload. And you can also see this does not have a full-length guide rod in it. Tritium front sight, Tritium rear sight, typical 3-dot night sight configurations. And this actually works out really nice. They're serrated rear sight, so you don't get any glare off it, but this sight picture is very nice all the way out to 50 yards. We'll do some range footage here a little bit later in the video. Front cocking serrations, rear cocking serrations. Now this has the what's called the black tea finish, which is very similar to their armory coat finish. It's a polymer baked on finish that has Teflon impregnated in it to help with lubricating, and the black tea is supposedly a slightly heavier finish than the regular armory coat, which also provides for a little snugger fit. And there's absolutely no play at all between the slide and the frame on this. So if that's a snugger fit, then I wonder if the armory coat might have just a little bit of play between the frame and the slide. Let's see, the no big billboards on it. Does say operator, caliber 10 millimeter, does say TRP on the back. If it doesn't say TRP, it's not a TRP operator. Same thing on this side, it's got the TRP Springfield logo. So it doesn't say an awful lot, nothing really jumps out at you on the slide, which is, to me, is good. And slide to frame fit is very nice. Slide to extractor fit is pretty good, not quite perfect, but very good. For this price range, it should be good. These are supposedly hand fitted. And again, no play between the slide and the frame at all. Although slide to barrel hookup is more important than slide to frame hookup, but and I've seen some guns that'll rattle slide to frame, but are still very accurate as long as that barrel to slide hookup is proper. Let's see, moving down into the frame itself. By the way, these are forged frame and forged slides. None of this cast stuff for this particular gun. Does have a 3-slot Picatinny rail on the front, so you can hang whatever you want to hang from the front. And typical pattern of the slide release. Does have an ambidextrous safety on it for those who like to be able to work the safety from either side, or for those who need to. Skeletonized hammer, skeletonized trigger, typical beaver tail of quality 1911s has what's called a speed bump or a memory bump on it, so there's no likelihood of not getting that grip safety deactivated in order to be able to properly work the gun. Comes apart like any other 1911. The VZ Alien pattern G10 grips provide a lot of grip on this. They are scalloped right here where the thumb would want to reach the magazine release. And of course, typical 1911 is not an ambidextrous or switchable magazine release. Lots of grip on it. No real undercutting on the trigger guard, however. Certainly not as you'd see on some others where they do undercut that just a little bit to get you a slightly higher grip. But again, I didn't have any controllability problems with this gun. The pattern on the front strap and the mainspring housing is just a little bit different than normal. It's not checkering. This is actually what they call their octo grip. I shot this with gloves on, if I remember correctly, but even without it, this gun sits solidly in the hand. The octo grip texture isn't so sharp that it's going to be abrading my hand at all, but it does give me a good solid grip. Love the way that, of course I like the way 1911s feel anyway, but I like the way this particular gun grips. The trigger on this, I think, is one of the things that helps out with the accuracy. You know, first of all, there's no significant up and down plate, just a hair. I get that out of a lot of even good 1911s. It's not quite perfectly fitted, but it's close. You'll notice that there is a little wear on the left side of this trigger that you don't see on the right. And I've looked at all of my other 1911s, and about half of them have wear on the left side. And that's because as a right-handed shooter, I'm actually pressing the trigger just a hair to the left, so it's scraping against the left side of the frame. On some of the higher quality guns that I've got, I'm not seeing that same wear pattern, which tells me the trigger is fitted just a little bit better in those. Also, some I'm even seeing it just a little bit on the right. But I don't notice that I'm pushing to the left, and I'm certainly not pushing my shots to the left, as you'll see in the range footage, but it is wearing just a little bit on that side. Slightly beveled magazine well, not a real steep bevel, but certainly enough to be able to aid somewhat in inserting a magazine, although for the hostage teams, you may need to be able to change magazines quickly. If you have to get into a second magazine when you're facing a charging animal, it might be too late. So hopefully you get it all done in the first 9 rounds. But back to the trigger. This trigger, again, we are unloaded. By the way, it's also racking this can be a little bit tough if you don't have strength in both hands. You may have some problems. It's got an 18.5 pound recoil spring in it, which is a little stout. Again, I'm not having any trouble, but my wife is not going to be able to rack this particular gun. But the trigger has a little bit of take up, not objectionable. It's got a little bit of movement as it goes through the wall, and then a dead stop. It does not have an over travel stop on it, so obviously this is fitted very nicely to not need that over travel stop. And this breaks at just under 4 pounds consistently. It averages out to about 3 pounds 13 ounces over 5 pulls. Again, a nice feeling trigger. It is serrated on a 1911. That's certainly not a deal killer at all. And typical 1911 scallop just a little bit for the trigger finger, right or left-handed, to get around to that trigger. Now, we didn't shoot this thing a lot. Again, I didn't have any 10mm ammunition to start with. A friend of mine had some 10mm ammo and didn't have a 10mm gun anymore. He needed large rifle primers. I have no need for large rifle primers anymore, so we did a swap, and I got a box of 50. And I stopped into my local gun shop and talking to the manager, and they happened to have a box of 50 rounds out back at a reasonable price. Otherwise, the ammo for this thing right now, if you can find it, is generally for target ammo is going to run you about 72 cents every time you pull the trigger. For good defensive ammo, you might pay upwards of $2 every time you pull the trigger on this. Not a gun that I want to shoot a lot unless I got into reloading. And we did shoot some of Jim's reloads to start with. I didn't want to shoot up all of his ammo, so we did then follow it up with some PMC, 200 grain, and some cellular and Balat 180 grain 10mm ammo. We didn't sight this in. We didn't change the sights. Of course, the sights are drift adjustable in the rear, so we could have moved it left and right, but again, somebody else's gun, I'm not going to mess with those. You can't change the elevation on those unless you actually physically change the sights. But this was right on. So we put 5 rounds each of 2 different kinds of ammunition through this at 15 yards, shooting at a 3-inch circle. And I pulled 2 shots out of that 3-inch circle. That's me, not the gun. And otherwise, 8 of those 10 shots were right in that 3-inch circle. One of them right in the 1-inch circle in the center. So it shoots real nice. I was happy with the way it shot. We took it right out to 25 yards, and no problem at all hitting the 12-inch plate, of course, no problem at all on the 8-inch plate. And even getting the center of the silhouette punched out was no problem. Getting it back took me a couple of shots, but again, that's not the gun, that's me. So we moved it out to 50 yards, and no problem at all with the 16-inch plate or the 12-inch plates. It rang those quite easily. When I went over to the 10-inch plate on the left side of 50 yards, I struggled a little bit. I was shooting just a hair high right, and again, you see those shots that I pulled initially at 15 yards. I pulled them high and won them just a hair right. So that was me, not the gun. This gun is certainly capable. Once I found where I needed to be on that, it hit the 10-inch with no problem. And again, I didn't put a lot of ammo through it just because we didn't have a lot of ammunition to shoot at it. And the only malfunction I had with this gun during the entire time we had it was one time it didn't lock back on one of the factory equipped magazines. By the way, this gun does come with 2 stainless steel magazines, but other than that one where it failed to lock back, this gun gave me no trouble at all. No problems with feeding, ejecting, shooting, anything. So this gun, as you see it right here, is about a little over $1,700 manufacturer suggested retail price. You can find them for right around $1,500, give or take. And you can also find this gun in a 6-inch. The difference between the 5-inch, which this is, and the 6-inch is obviously 1-inch difference in the barrel, but the 6-inch also comes with adjustable sights as opposed to the fixed combat type sight. I guess Springfield is figuring that the 6-inch they're more likely to be used for competition or for hunting as opposed to defensive use, which is what this gun's used for. This gun has the rear sight is more typical of what you'll see on a defensive type gun. So that is the Springfield TRP Operator 10mm 1911 in a nutshell. So I want to thank my friend Jim Huff for loaning us this gun. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to give it back to him. I can't keep it. Of course, if I kept it, I'd have to feed it, and as I mentioned, that gets pretty expensive. So I'm going to clean it up, give it back to Jim, and I sincerely thank him for loaning us this Springfield Operator TRP to check out here on Riders Range. If you like these videos, we by all means do appreciate a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Click on the notifications bell so you know what's coming up in the next Riders Range video. Comments on this video down below are really appreciated. Comments help us get up a little bit higher in the YouTube algorithm so we can be found more easily. By all means, share these videos. Share it through whatever platform you can think of, which will, again, help get the word out and continue to help Riders Range grow. We do appreciate our subscribers. We appreciate the viewers. And comments on anything else, please send them to info@ridersrange.com and let us know anything else that you'd like to see us review here on Riders Range. If I don't have it, I'll see if I can get it. So that's it on the Springfield Operator TRP 10mm here on Riders Range. I want to thank you for stopping by.